I like to invite, just to take a moment of invocating and inviting and remembering our ancestors. Not only the ancestors that may be from our lineage, our blood lineage, but maybe for those who are adopted, or even a tradition that has been adopted, such as myself, adopted into the Theravada lineage of Buddhism, and many elders and teachers who have impacted my life, who are on my ancestral altar. I think of them very much and would like to call them in. And so just take a moment, and you can close your eyes or have your eyes open, and just really calling in your teachers, your ancestors, those who have been important teachers of the heart, or, direct teachers of one's presence and being, cultural, and practice of really acknowledging those who've touched our lives, whether they're our relatives. In many ways, they are extended relatives. They can even be the four-legged who walk with us, the winged creatures, those without legs, those hidden in the depth of the earth, those hidden in the ocean, those unseen. It's not just those seen or who have touched our lives. Many who have, at some point in our path, has pointed a way back home to us in some way. And just really acknowledging and remembering maybe loved ones or friends of loved ones who may be right now having a hard time, whether it's physically or mentally, or just challenges that are in their way, just sending out some metta. And in this remembrance, you're also remembering those who steward the land. I am in San Francisco, which is the unceded territory of the Ramaytush Ohlone. And just acknowledging not only those who steward the land in the past, but those who still steward the land, who are very much alive. Indigenous people in all four corners of the world, not just my own backyard, who are fighting for natural resource rights, for the dignity of Mother Earth, and the acknowledgement of our resource of the life-given aspect of the element of water and even air. All which our very life depends on. Just acknowledging and giving thanks and welcoming them to be here this evening with us. Oh, Watakiasa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And, I just wanted to bring a little bit of, for me, like this practice of bringing in the remembering of the six sense doors from a Buddhist perspective, and at the same time, the element work, and just looking at those 10 potential doors. And that if I were to include space, that would be the 11th, and the silence would be the 12th. It's just these, all of these doors that we can go through, walk through in each moment to feel the, what's the word I want to use? The many beautiful layers of who we are and what we are. This the expansion, because we go around perceiving ourselves to be whatever that may be, and how we see ourselves and what we identify with. And yet sometimes we forget about these six sense doors and the elements as part of a practice to deepen and widen, all that we are, and in relationship to the external and internal world. So as we breathe, we connect with the trees. As we remember water, we connect with all the rivers and streams, and and just connecting on this internal and external view, and expanding our view, expanding beyond our identities and our stories and our ideas. And yet through these six sense doors, birth's perception, and our perception can be true or not, and it goes into our stories and our thoughts and our clinging and our grasping. And as the Buddha Dharma, as the Buddha would teach, it would be even to the characteristics of greed, hatred, and delusion that we're seeing at full scale, right now in the world. And then how it relates to ourselves in this full scale reality, and questioning even further. So just looking at what people are saying, lovely, heartfelt connection, beautiful to connect with, thank you, connectivity to be and break out community with others. The questions were evocative, freedom and space to be honest, so calming, brave, appreciating the opportunity to connect and share about our practice. It's so important for me to, just to read it out loud because there's a declaration of it. And I'm declaring whatever is being said, through this like remembering of oral tradition. Just being able to say it, to create it as a declaration of the moment. Someone's words, someone's feelings, someone's thoughts, someone's experience. Anyway, I wanted to talk tonight. I was hoping this practice of mind like ocean, it invokes a memory of depth that resides in ourselves, and that in the natural world we can use these metaphors, this memory and these images and symbols, or even real life experience if we have the access to nature in that way, to go to the ocean, to go lay, next to a redwood tree or a tree of any sort, and be in the company of nature and remembering what is in our very nature. And remembering that the Buddha himself, awakened by the, earth witnessing his enlightenment. And I feel like our breath, when I brought into the meditation, there's this reminder for me that my breath, breathing, is also in the process of my life, intimately as my witness. And how often do I connect with this process, this breath, this element of breath, and even with the element of air running through the breath, and remembering, who are the relatives that I am utilizing this air from, like carbon dioxide that gives me life from the trees, and the oxygen that I need to live. And it's bringing all this now even more so than ever because of the climate crisis that we're in, and noticing that nature would only usually be at extreme. It's not a natural rhythm for nature to be in extreme weather patterns. It's usually, as you go in, walk into nature, very slow to medium energy rhythms. But occasionally the extreme is necessary. And it's interesting as I start to think about these times that we're in, and really asking the question, how is our practice holding us, and are we in the depth of our practice of stillness, and does that feel inviting even at a time? And what I recently heard, a dear friend of mine, her name is Jenny Velalosa. She's Filipina. She's, a reporter, a journalist in the Philippines. And actually, she's really quite known in Southeast Asia as an astrologist, even though she won't put that out there. But people sought her out to want to know about the stars and the planets and the alignment and where their life is. And each and every time she says something, it's quite remarkable. And I just heard a teaching from her. It was just a 4-minute teaching of her talking about, we are in this, this presence of a tornado, using the image and the metaphor of a tornado. And she just explained, the nature of a tornado. Like in the external, there's all this turbulence happening, all this, in disruption, even when a tornado is happening. And externally, it is just quite madness. It's just, all around, picking up everything, taking things in. But yet, in the center, it's calm, silent, focus. There's a depth to it that is quite clear and still in the eye of the storm. And it's even brought to my attention that even Reiki practitioners utilize this imagery to find and cultivate the stillness, using the eye of the storm, just feeling the external, around it being chaotic. And what she was pointing to was, if we're not in the depth of a practice, that we can cultivate stillness and listen, then we can easily get caught by the external circumstances and just be taken easily and quite rapidly, just like a storm, caught in it. So she was pointing to these practices of really provoking and invoking the depth of stillness and listening that goes back to the indigenous way of being, and feeling one's own settling of, even if there's a storm happening outside us, what is holding in that moment to us, to the resiliency of that silence and stillness and cultivation. From her perspective, she speaks a lot around, the spirituality component. And really, she likes to talk about it outside of Christianity, because in the Philippines, it's 95% Christian. And she talks about it, points to bringing in more of a spiritual perspective, more spaciousness, more open and expansiveness, more self-care, more, a state of wellness in one's mind, in one's being, and not so much tight with the dogma of religion, or even the stories, or pointing or holding on to any one particular story. But just really the cultivation of moving with the natural phenomena of what is occurring in the world, and yet not missing the moment that we're in, and remembering the state of stillness and silence as a deep practicing to be with, that nature in itself can survive the immense extreme weather patterns or chaos or destruction. Earth itself can still persevere beyond even however many crises, floods, or fires, or earthquakes, or how in ourselves as humans, these walking earths, as we would say, we have all the same elements. How do we hold ourselves in these times? So I wanted to bring today a friend of mine and colleague, Diana Winston, who I've had the great fortune of just shadowing her when I was training, and really in long residential retreat perspective with Spirit Rock. She's been, a friend for many, a couple of decades, and I've known her practice to be very deep. And she has this little book of being, which talks and points to this cultivation of starting to build a practice of awareness, just building a practice of natural awareness. From a Dharma perspective, how, we're in this practice, for myself, a Theravada tradition where the practices come from, lack of a better expression, classical Buddhism, where we are focused on an object, such as our breath, or, sound, or a body that is neutral. We focus to train our mind to really, be quiet, just as we're quieting the body and creating stillness. and relaxing and resting in the moment in such a way that it becomes effortless to be still. And even we start to experience that even in between all the thoughts of coming and going, we start to see stillness within the in between the thinking and the story. And with practice, we start to widen that. It starts to widen. The spaciousness of stillness widens and less thoughts, less and less feelings, less and less stories to cling on to as we rest into a natural process of being. And then we come into, she talks about these three ways of coming into this practice of natural awareness in one's life and practice. And we start to realize that as we start to expand outward, we become really, our attention becomes no longer in just one object. We train the mind enough to be aware that there are choiceless options, that our mind brings our attention to many things all at once, and it moves us around in these ways. And we start to, really broaden our awareness in such a way that it opens up something in us. It's an open invitation to bring in this awareness in a wider lens. It's no longer just one object. We can loosen up a little and go with it. And through that invitation, we start to realize that the object is no longer an object, it's objectless. And our awareness becomes awareness itself. We just blow out the objects. We've trained the mind so much so that thoughts don't even occur, that when they do occur, it doesn't matter. We just naturally go to whatever the mind takes us, and it may take us to a sensation of the body, or it may take a sound that's coming from the external. It just starts to widen. It may even bring a memory of some sort, and it starts to widen even further. Even the memory may capture a moment of us, if not a few minutes of us, and yet we don't get caught. We keep expanding outward. It might bring us back to our breath. And through this type of choiceless awareness, this awareness that continues to just go with whatever is flowing, but yet in a way that is not caught in it, in a way that is in itself focus in a sense. We then start to become aware through the spacious and the widening of that awareness itself is here without any object. And then we start to feel the sense door of space, and the spaciousness widens with the silence. And it's through that experience in itself that we start to remember the depth of this practice, even more so, this expansive practice beyond form, and moving into the realm of the formless, moving into the realm beyond this body, beyond our stories, beyond our identity for a moment. And it's not to utilize it in a way that we escape, although many can do that and spiritually bypass. But instead to find a place of deep calm, of deep residence, of remembering, and a remembering that is so in depth. It is as vast as the ocean floor and deep. There's a point around the world where out of all the oceans, the greatest and the deepest oceans that still, I think some scientists went as far as they thought they could go. And the depth of, it's just outside of the east side of the Philippines. It's the deepest part of the ocean in the world. And that's why so many scientists go there, because even today, believe it or not, there's still new biodiversity of species that are born, that we've never even seen or heard of, that don't have a name. And because of the depth of the ocean, it's so vast and so still. And there is a recalling of a scientist who was able to go into a special submarine that allow it to go deep, 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 but it only could go, not the submarine, it had to be a very special sort of, they went through, I can't remember the exact story, it's been a while, but the pressure is so intense, the deeper it went into the ocean. So it had to withhold that. And one scientist was able to go in and she was able to explain her experience of that and what that felt like in the mind and the coolness of her dropping, hundreds of meters each minute. And I feel like, our minds are inviting us and ourselves, this practice, this spiritual practice is pointing us towards, even though the external circumstances could have fear and chaos around us, that there is an invitation of us to deepen even further to the depth of our beyond our understanding, because it's still not known in that part of the ocean how deep the floor really is, if there's an end, or there is, so they suspect. But it's even sometimes beyond our understanding. And I think I want to point that, that these practices sometimes can invoke that in our being. And we start to understand that we're in uncharted territories of ourselves. And when we start to go in the terrain of uncharted territories, it is only natural that fear arises. It is only natural that we start to constrict. It is only natural that we become even more fixed in our beliefs. And then and in fact, we could be, the ego aspect of us could be, as one of my dear teachers would point out, fighting for dear life. Because we're in this uncharted territories. Yet there's something deeply resonating with it that our mind cannot get caught in, because it invokes the heart and the spirit of who we are, which is boundless and quite unexplainable. I mean, as far as I know, no one's done a dissertation of the heart, of love. Maybe Bell Hooks started it with her dissertation of the book all about love, which she got lots of criticism for being an academic going in the realm of love. But the point too, that it's really pointing to this boundless place that has no floor, that has no earth, nothing beneath it, nothing above it, all expansive. And I feel like these times are made for us to really come back into a place of practicing in such a way that invites spaciousness in ourselves, in our mind, in our heart, in our being. And providing the space allows us to drop in and touch upon the type of listening, deep listening, to know what is here in terms of self-care, what's important in these moments, let alone to be able to go out into the world and to be of service. For me, that's a great value and a great practice, to be of service, to be a part of the solution and to connect with others, even as there's tension arising. So think that that's really what I want to point to. And I know that tonight the time goes by very quickly. I think we have 8 minutes left. For many of you who know me, I can talk forever. So I'm just acutely aware of time. And yeah, so I just feel like this objectless, this choiceless, it may not start off that way. I pointed to tonight that this remembrance of the sense doors and the elements of this natural phenomenon that we're connected to outside of us coexists within us, and that expands outward and inward and beyond, even to the cosmos, even to the depth of the floor of the ocean, even to the natural phenomenon, as my dear friend was pointing out, of the tornado. And using these natural metaphors or images, we're witnessing nature at its finest moments that are just rafting through and creating chaos. But just as my friend was pointing, which do we choose? A practice that cultivates stillness so that we don't get caught up in the chaos. We may for a time, and that's okay. So the spaciousness will allow us some flexibility to be flexible with ourselves and expansive and kind, so that we can still come back to this practice to cultivate in such a depth of stillness and listening that we can go out into the world and be connected to our beloveds, our family, our friends, our community, each other, because we need each other more than ever at this time. I guess I would love to dedicate the merit, through this quote from him, just bringing from his book of silence. We need to cultivate a spiritual dimension of our life if we want to be light, free, and truly at ease. We need to practice in order to restore this kind of spaciousness. Only when we have been able to open space within ourselves can we really help others. And I will put ourselves in there too. And may that be so in all directions, outward to all in need of more space and remembering of one's own beloved self and effort. May the practice continue to touch everyone's life in some way, seen and unseen, that invokes memory. May it be so.